Hey guys, it's Tim Gillette here, and we're back with another episode of the Tim Gillette Show. Today, we actually get to find out who Patricia Gagic is. Now, I've known Patricia about 8 years. I met her through Craig Duswalt. All right, Craig, you owe me another nickel for mentioning your name, and that's the way we're going to do this show. But I've known Patricia a long time. All right, ever since I met her through Craig's mastermind and through his program. We kind of hit it off as friends a long time ago. Just never had her on the podcast, even when all three versions of my podcast, never had her on. So I decided to bring her on this time and find out about who she is and let you guys know who she is, because she's really a cool girl, very artistic. All right. An author, a speaker. Like, she's got an interesting trifecta, I like to call, of connecting with people. So I'm going to bring her on here. You're going to get to know her just like I have. Hi, Patricia.
Hello.
How are you doing up there in Canada?
Hey, good. Thank you. Yeah, we don't have any snow today, which is really nice. We had snow a few days ago, but it doesn't last. But yeah, getting into the spring feeling is good.
So are you on lockdown up there like we are down here?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, not leaving the house and just trying to behave. I saw my sister for the first time in about a month. She drove past my house and we had a quick chit chat, 6 feet away. But I mean, COVID has definitely been a test of patience and a lot of emotion.
Yeah. It's for us, it was like we went out last weekend to visit friends, and we went over to their house and we sat on one side of their sidewalk. They sat on the other, and we had a conversation about 10 feet apart.
Yeah.
And like, just because we were like, we want to get out.
I know.
Yeah. So, I mean, but I mean, has this stopped you from doing any work? I mean, you still work, right?
Yeah. So, well, I'm fortunate because my studio is downtown. So as an artist, I'm able to go back and forth to the studio downtown, but I kind of created a makeshift place for me to do my art downstairs in the library. So that's been good. And I'm also reworking on my book and doing some writing for my speaking that's coming up. And for the most part, I'm pretty isolated. I live in I'm like a cave yogi where I don't need a lot of, social existence. So yeah, I'm pretty good. It's not really, it's pretty status quo for me, really.
Oh, okay. I mean, for me, I mean, I always have worked out of my house, so it's not much different.
Right.
Same surroundings behind me, you know what I mean? Yeah. But my wife is home and we have a small condo. So it's like, we have this high ceiling we thought was cool. But it's an echo chamber. She can hear everything, every conversation I have, and I can hear every conversation she has. So it's like, it's different. We're not used to it, but we're making do.
Yeah, I think that's for this. A lot of people are going through restructuring their personal environments because, like my daughter has 3 children, and she's definitely, learning to be that stay-at-home mom with, homeschooling, and then trying to keep a 17-year-old occupied, which you know what that's like. And then, a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, and everybody demands your attention, and your world is really different.
Yeah.
Getting on people's nerves a lot, I think.
I've had more headaches over the past couple of weeks than I've ever had before, but and I think it's just because I think it's just related to stress, or
Sure.
what's the unexpected, things like that. So, right. But I mean, I'm trying to get through it. But anyway, I want to talk to you and tell my listeners what you do. I mean, because you've got this like interesting thing of artist, author, speaker that. It's an interesting combination. So I want you to explain this to my followers and my listeners.
All righty. So yes, I wear a lot of hats, and I always have, which I think if I go back to the first time I attended one of, I'll get a nickel, Craig Duswalt boot camps, you all of a sudden realize that you have to either pick a path, pick a lane, but I'm not that girl. And so what I ended up having was a significant business career. I originally started off as a banker, and I was one of the first youngest female bankers in Canada at the age of 25. I also became an entrepreneur. So I've
Mhm.
owned a retirement home. I had a property management business. I've always been painting. I've always had a strong art career and business. So at this point in time, I'm focusing right now on taking the first book that I wrote, which
Mhm.
is Karmic Alibi, and the offshoots of that have triggered me into wanting to, really give the message of mindfulness and meditation and being in that practice zone a little bit more of an emphasis. So I'm doing a rewrite of um, Karmic Alibi, and I'm not sure if I'm tapping into something called the Karmic Revolution, which I also had triggered several years ago.
Mhm.
And I think these are the spin-offs that give me an opportunity to, still create in the zones that I want to create in, and offer people a little bit of the wisdom. Yeah.
Mhm. So yeah, and I remember I met you right about the time Karmic Alibi came out, and I remember you, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, doing the whole pitch for that and everything when it came out, and I thought it was interesting, um, and here we are 8 years later, and you're rewriting it.
Well, okay. So when I made the decision that we were going to do, like Craig's write a book in 30 days, that was
Mhm.
definitely the trigger. That man, and again, he'll owe me a loony after this one, but he truly has changed for sure, for sure, for sure. Many people's lives, mine significantly,
Mhm. Mhm.
because, as an artist, as a creator, left side, right side, I'm very, very shy. And
Mm.
I know everyone is shocked when I say that, but I truly have this inner world of, what I create. That's what I want you to see. I don't want you to look at me. I don't want you to hear me. I've always been the person who, whatever I'm producing is what I want to put my focus on. And Craig really pushed me way, way out of my comfort zone. And I can even remember one of the first masterminds, and this goes back quite a ways, where I think I was sitting at the table with, I think, Marianne Amon and then Larry Broughton. And everyone was, determined to get you to just pick that one thing and say that one, this is your product. And I got it. I understood that, but it was definitely not something that was easy for me because I had success in so many different areas
Mhm.
and things, not even the success. I just loved to do these different things. With Karmic Alibi, when we were to write this book in 30 days, I wanted to write a nonfiction narrative which would describe some of the things that had taken place in my life and do it in a way that there would be a lesson, because obviously we all go through these things and we become somewhat enlightened, or we think we have a little bit more wisdom about what we do. And as the past decade has flown past, more things that I think are really relevant have transpired, and I want to add them to the stories. And I'm not sure if it's something that should just be a whole new book, or I will take this one apart and then kind of delete and add to it. But that's you know, that's where it's making me, I guess, stand up right now.
Ah, I mean, I know like my book, my original book that I did about the same time that you did
Right.
that. And I think I did mine like 6 months after you did yours. It's totally irrelevant to what I do today. All right, but I don't even think I have. I don't even think it's in published anymore. I used Karen back then,
Right.
from down down up in New York, or over in New York from you and I. But
Yeah.
um, and I just, it doesn't relevant. So I've never gone back to do it. But I have another book that I never produced using that same method.
Right.
All right, and yeah, I find that my brand has transitioned so much that I have to rewrite an entire different book now. Um, how about you in the transition? You know what I mean? Have you transitioned much
Oh
that
my
you think
gosh.
that like it's irrelevant because you know what I mean? You're rewriting it with all these changes.
Well, the basic of my life has pretty much been, the artist and the business person.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
the beautiful side of living in a world that we live in right now is tapping into that spiritual side. And without it being I'm not a woo woo person in that capacity, but I definitely have, studied significant things. The foundation for the preservation of the Mahayana tradition, the Hanmi Esoteric Mystery School of Buddhism, the Kabbalah, many, many different aspects of life. And so those things do bring you to a new level of awareness. And then about maybe 5, 6 years ago, or maybe longer, I decided that I would go back to school, and I went to the University of Toronto and I became certified in applied mindfulness and transformative mindfulness. So I took 2 3-year certification programs in the same 3 years.
Wow.
And yeah, that was, you end up becoming, a certified meditation specialist, and your the essence of what you do offers those changes. So, do I have more wisdom? Do I have more insight? Are there things that I would now be willing to share with people about my life? Yeah, probably so. And I'm like you too, though. I have these ideas that you want to, twist and turn. So when I wrote Karmic Alibi, I knew that that story was done and said.
Hmm.
After that, I wrote a book called, it's a fiction book called Karma and Cash, which I actually released, and then I didn't like it. And so I really haven't done anything, with it. But it's another book that needs a rewrite because now I see the relevance. I have a fiction book in me, The Black Snowflake, which also has about 37 spin-offs. Another one called Thirsters and Quenchers. So I've been working on doing the due diligence and that for about, oh my God, like 13 or 14 years. But I think if I'm going to play in the arena of being, an author or a speaker, it has to be relevant. It has to be relevant to my life. It has to be relevant to what I think people want to hear. And then that there won't always be people that like you or think that your message is relevant, but there will always be somebody who will tap into that energy and say, what she has to say made sense to me. I can relate to that person, yourself, and then you feel as if you've accomplished something. So whatever everybody's destiny or journey is, the journey is the destination. So we have to use it wisely. I think time and energy are the two greatest assets that we have, and I think we need to use them wisely.
Hmm. Hmm. So, and have I've thought many a times with mine to write like a part two.
Right.
Um, you know, have you considered doing it that way, or you really just want to rewrite it?
Well, I went to Nepal and Tibet
Hmm.
about 4 years ago with Lama Glen Mullen and a small group of people. And that was a really big life changing experience. And actually, I went in Nepal was just right after the earthquake.
Mm.
So there were huge impacts emotionally, physically. And that all by itself became one of my part twos, where I
Hmm.
thought, there's so much that needs to be said about, the world around us. I have my project in Cambodia, which I started in 2006. So that's important. I've spent another 10 years with my mentor, Dragon in France. So there's another huge decade of the part two. Are some of the things that we do so separate, or should we incorporate them all into the one story? And that's what I'm trying to figure out right now is how will I piece this together and what things need to be said.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. And I mean, it's interesting. I mean, your life is ever changing. Do you feel like you'll ever retire?
No. No, 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 no. Never, ever. No, there's nothing to retire from. I
Uh-huh.
mean, I think if I take my last breath, I'm going to say that's my retirement moment. I'm no,
Yeah.
I have so many things still yet to do and projects and people to meet and see. And no, I think I'm in a pretty good space right now. I always have been, but I think it's a really nice space. I've never, wanted to have that billionaire mentality.
Mm-hmm.
You know, unless I can, if I had the billion and I could do amazing things with it, for sure, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I love I love the journey, and I love the people that I've met. I'm big into the karma piece, and that means every person, you're part of my karma. I mean, sometimes we assume every person that we meet is supposed to happen in that moment where you're supposed to connect with them right there and then. But
Mm-hmm.
it might just be that it evolves,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's a moment when something falls into place. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say that. I mean, sometimes it's right away, sometimes it's a while before things fall into place. And you know what I mean? I think about that with everything I'm doing and how things have taken years to fall, you know what I mean? For dots to connect, I like to
For
say.
sure.
All
Right.
right. And then I look at my life and go, you know what I mean? It was, for me, it was 17 years ago that a man said, Tim, you should do this. And it wasn't, until 10 years ago that I just started to do it.
Right.
And I mean, and you look at your life and go, okay, do I need to rush into it now, or do I just wait till the right time comes in? What's your opinion on that?
Well, I'll tap into the mindfulness piece,
Mm-hmm.
and being fully present in a particular way right now without judgment is really, for me, the easiest way to determine. And it's a flawless way of thinking. We have like this neocortex, our thinking brain. We have our emotional limbic brain. But in reality, every single thing that you're doing, if you're paying attention and you're focused on, what immediate result or how you're actually in a way in servitude, not only to yourself, but to others, it will fall into place. And, life is a skill. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you can look at, the work of Joseph Campbell, and here we have this reality where, you're fitting in and you're trying to do every conceivable possible thing to make sure that, you're fitting into the whole genre of life and
Mm-hmm.
connecting to everybody. But on the other side is this darkness, it's the shadow, it's the places where maybe you're really thinking about yourself and how you truly feel and what's your soul vision, or where is it that you think your path should lead. But you have to connect it to the upstairs part where you have
Yeah.
to sort of feel like, but I have to still do this, this, and this. We got to pay the bills. We
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
do, I want to be popular. I would like people to buy into my program. But then are you personally fully satisfied with your life at the end of that, thought process? So mindfulness for me is a big part of it. I really do think, what's necessary in life and how much of that is necessary for me. Or am I really good just to go back into that cave in Tibet in the Chimpuk Mountains and meditate for 24 days and just come walking out and saying, well, the world is still here and it's all still clicking. And, how good do I feel about myself as a human being right now? What am I going to offer? And
Mm-hmm.
then tackle that. So,
Mm.
yeah.
But you know what I mean? How many people that you've worked with, all right, are in this place where really right now their world is maybe not being in that cave in Tibet, but their world is the cave they're in right now. And
Yeah.
would you encourage them to, hey, maybe it's time to put a picture or a video or something up of that place and meditate in place?
Well, aren't you tapping into the 20 trillion gazillion dollar question? Oh my God.
I knew I could ask you that, Patricia. Yeah.
Yeah, let me put my Buddha brain on here. Wow. Well, how do we know what any single person's life is about? Some people are born and they're here for just minutes and then
Mm-hmm.
babies pass.
Mm-hmm.
Other people are here for, 21 years and then they pass. It scares me to think about, every single day, are we alive and will I have another day to live? And during the time that I've had, the journey and all the people that I've met, I just simply have to believe that, whoever is doing what they're doing is part of their realization. That's part of their karmic journey, and
Mm-hmm.
their choices are being made. I do believe, again, here I go in, future and past lives. I do believe that. I can't imagine that we have this energy in this universe, this consciousness that will just simply dissolve.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, trying to be a better person, following whatever it is that your dream or your path is definitely your journey. And
Hmm.
yeah, do I think people should tap into that? You know, I'm a Rotarian, so it's service above self.
Hmm.
And when I think about that, it jolts me back into thinking, about how do I give? How can I make somebody else's journey or their life, be more valuable, be more meaningful, and just simply help them. And at the end of the day, you know, what's that value to you as a human being? Is that sufficient? Is that your $1 million, check? You
Hmm.
don't know. But yeah, I certainly do hope that people will stop and think, and, you know, it's about choices and making clearer, better choices. There's a time when, you acquire assets, when, you want to have the house, you want to have the car, you want to be building this up. And here we are during this time of this, COVID-19, where a lot of people who have acquired these significant assets have to figure out how they're going to pay for them, you
Yeah.
know. So again, it's like, what choices did you make at the time that you made them? They were important, they were valuable, and we're all driven by the economy. But how do you devolve that?
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think this is for the next little while. There will be people who are going to turn to, you know, meditation or mindfulness, or seeking, in those self-help books, a way of calming themselves and bringing abiding. So yeah, this is really going to be opening up a new mindset for people.
Hmm. And we both have a mutual friend, Larry Broughton, and Larry kind
Yes.
of Larry actually tunes into a lot of my broadcasts. And when I had him on, he actually talked about something that for a CEO like himself really impacts me. You know what I mean? And how people like you and I, who we're not, maybe not the big CEO like him,
Mhm.
but that personal learning, he's big on this. You know what I mean? I spend so much of my day in personal growth. And I mean, you're out there still teaching personal growth, even through a dilemma we're going through right now. Correct?
Right. Yes. So several years ago, when I was writing, just before I wrote Karmic Alibi,
Uh-huh.
I had tapped into something, inspired to be rewired, and I was thinking about, what is it about life? And I wrote Mastering the Five Radical Degrees of Life, which
Hmm.
are risk, root, remedy, realization, and reality. And if I think about people who, Glenn Morshower, someone that, we
No,
both
another,
know and
yeah,
adore,
gentleman,
and he
yeah.
has, but the choices we've all made in our lives to play it big on the big stage, or
Hmm.
or to simply be rooted in what it is that you are, whatever that call is.
Hmm.
It's who you are and what you're supposed to do. It's there in front of you. So, you just simply have to make the best of it. And yeah, do we reach out to people and have mentors, and you know try to fuel a better way for others? 100%. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. So, I mean, in your journey, though, all right, through all this, Patricia, is I mean, well, first of all, what town do you live in Canada? I know you live in Canada, but I don't know the specific.
Okay, so I'm in Ancaster, Ontario, which
Hmm.
is just in between Hamilton and Burlington, just about maybe 45 miles outside of Toronto.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
But through this journey, all right, is like, I mean, I'm in Texas. All right. We met in California.
Right.
You've met an awful lot of friends along the way that are now all around the world. Tell
Totally.
us about meeting these people, and how do you, like you said, okay, I'm getting out of my town here and I'm going to go scout the world. And all of a sudden now you have friends around the world.
Right. Well, oh my goodness. Let's see. Well, I can think about, art opens up a door for that.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, back in 1999, um, I had the privilege, and this was a whole synchronicity story as well, of meeting somebody in France. So when you want to do something and you have this expectation that it should happen, and you're not looking for it to happen, but then it arrives, you have to make the decision on what you do with it.
Hmm.
So we were going to rent this place in France. I went into Toronto. I'll give you the short story. I went into Toronto to meet him and get the keys and the story. It was a place called La Bigoud de Mazinc. And when I walked into this gentleman's house, my goodness, it was like art gallery, massive amounts, like 5 floors near Casa Loma in Toronto. And I saw this particular painting, a white horse, very abstract, with the name Dragic, and I was very drawn to it. So I said to the gentleman who I was with, and I said, who is this artist? And he said, oh, he's eccentric. He lives in the south of France, and you will never meet him, but he's very, I went, oh, and he goes, we're going to be very close to where he lives, maybe 3 or 4 hours in Mont Ventoux, where they
Mm-hmm.
have the cycling races. And I said, wow, I'd love to meet him. And he said, he'll never meet you. He doesn't want to meet people. He's eccentric. And I said, okay. Well, of course, we get to France, and I have a little thing in my head that it's that old piece where you were supposed to check it out. So
Mm-hmm.
yes, we finally convinced the gentleman to allow us to meet him. We arrived into Savoyon, and after about 4 or 5 hours of conversation, I walk in, I'm in his atelier, in his studio, in this 5th century turret home in the South of France. And he starts showing me pictures of him with Picasso and with Christo
Mm-hmm.
and with all of these incredible artists who have lived. And I'm totally freaking out because I'm thinking I am way out of my league here. And at the end of our meeting, I knew something had really churned inside of me and that this was a spectacular moment. I had to embrace it. And of course, he asked me if I would be interested in coming back 6 months later. I
Mm-hmm.
had to learn to speak some French because he does not speak English.
Okay.
And I did that. So in that moment, I created the mentor. I found one of my best friends. I did go for that week. It was brutal. It was something I would never have expected in my life. And I went back year after year after year, several times a year, to be with Dragan. And then one particular day, he brought me to a place, another artist's home, and Pierre Humbert, who happened to be one of Picasso's very, very close friends. And we arranged for me to go to Pierre's atelier, and we had lunch, and we sat back out on the deck of the house, and he sat me in this chair, and he said, "This is Monsieur Picasso's chair," and they wanted me to sit there and experience everything that I could possibly take in. So when you talk about having met interesting people, or yes, I was put into these very bizarre situations, and they're so isolated because it's only me there, and
Mm-hmm.
I can share the story, and I can relive those things. But when you're the only person in the experience, you truly have to know what you're going to do with that, and how important is it. I had dinner with Deepak Chopra.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the Royal Lodge, and I had dinner and lunch with HRH, Duke of York, Prince Andrew,
Oh,
as
wow.
part of the Colors of Freedom Foundation. So I was very good friends with Jigme Norbu, the Dalai Lama's nephew. Yeah, but at the same time, it's only meaningful in the moment. What you do with it is going to change, to some degree. But yeah, so you have to know what you want in these relationships, and certainly, yeah, interesting life.
Cool. And it is all right. I look into it. You know what I mean? When because I've watched your journey over the years and how many people you go and meet, but like, and you've met some great famous ones.
Yeah.
But like everybody you meet, like you treat them all like they're that cool, interesting person that you know what I mean you want to learn more about. And like even me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's the way you are. And I've always found that insightful about you. You know what I mean? And I think that's part of your karmic thing is you're like, you know what I mean? I'm going to treat, Joe over here like he's, the Dalai Lama, and that's interesting how you've done that and how many doors that's open for you to meet people.
Tim, it's equanimity.
Yeah.
I have lived with that in my life, my entire life, that every single person is equal. Every single person I have met has been a spectacular, unbelievable human being. I don't close my mind. I don't look at anybody. It's very interesting because judgment, we
Mhm,
have
mhm.
this, you know, like a caste system without it being a caste system in a way of how we think. And that I have avoided my entire life. I've always felt every single person has their own incredible value. And, you know, I don't, I just don't have that mindset of, you know, seeing somebody. I know how the world works, trust me.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
no, I value all my relationships. I have great deep respect for the integrity around what everybody is doing with their own life. I mean, that you're walking in your shoes, they're probably not easy to walk. And I know you have epilepsy.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, that's something that, you know, a lot of people don't understand, you know, how you have to take care of yourself, your mind, your body, and bring yourself to a place where, you know, there are no triggers.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So everybody's got their thing.
yeah. We all do. So, you know, and you know, of course, I mean, I remember one of the first couple times we met. I mean, you jumped to help me with a project or something at one of Craig's events, and I'm like, whoa, I don't even know this
Right.
person, but like they're willing to jump and go out of the ordinary to help me. And you know, and I thought that was fascinating. You know what I mean? And then in the mastermind, we hear stories about how you became friends with Craig's mom, and you know,
Oh
it's like,
yeah. And
yeah, you just you know latch onto some people, and like they don't ever want to let go of you.
it's nice fun times.
It is. It is. So I always like to ask this of everybody I have on my show. All right. Do you have like a, you know, maybe a childhood or younger years mentor that maybe said something or did something that has motivated you your entire life?
My dad.
Your dad? Yeah.
It would be my dad. He was he was I'm just going to say he was a very eccentric
Hmm.
man. Came literally, I mean, his whole life story was so, they came literally from the old country. They arrived into Canada and lived in a cardboard box in a field in Woodbridge, Ontario,
Hmm.
literally in a cardboard box, at least for a month until they were able to connect with people. And my grandfather was able to find a place for them to live and a job. So when I know just from him coming from that, you know, really from nothing. And
Hmm.
then the way he prided himself, he became a Royal Canadian Air Force, so he was in the RCAF. He was stationed in England. He didn't have to fight, but he did, you know, come back to Canada. And then he married my mom. She was only 17. Um, and then he became an accountant during a time that was very, you know, it was tough. And he was in the hotel business. So he worked for the Sheraton hotels. He was a comptroller. And we traveled. We lived in London. We lived in Omaha, Nebraska. So I had my American, you know, moment.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
then, so I would say it's my dad. My
Hmm.
dad. He passed away just after my 25th birthday,
Oh, wow.
which was pretty devastating. Yes.
Hmm.
But I couldn't imagine a more incredible person than him. I was very lucky to have him as my father.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I was in my 40s when I lost my dad, and you know, and my dad lost, you know, I mean, lost his dad when his dad was 40 something, you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
It's just, wow. When we look at, you know, some of the blessings we have, and I'm glad you got that with your dad,
Yeah, thank you.
that you did get the years with him so that he influenced you.
Yeah,
Because usually I find there's some great kindness influence behind people who do things like great things like you do. You know what I mean? There's always somebody behind it that always was like that inspiration that, you know what I mean, has carried you through, and it's and you can see the light into it, you know, in your life.
yeah. When my dad passed, it was interesting. I worked at the in Winnipeg for the bank, and the branch manager was a large branch. He really, I think he took me under his wing, and he just said, his name was Bruce. He's still alive. He's in a nursing home now. I'm still connected to him. But Bruce was the man who basically said, you know, you don't have a university education, Patricia, but you're really super smart.
Hmm.
And I see that you're a hard worker. Here's what you need to do. And that's when I registered for the ICB courses, the Institute of Canadian Banker. And then I did other things. And I just, you know, you just catapult yourself. I was lucky at that time to be in the old boys network when I was, but I clearly learned, you know, street smarts. But yeah, he was a person who, it's like that gentle father. You make a mistake and he tells you point blank, here's your mistake and how you've made it, but here's what not to do in the future. And,
Mm-hmm.
if you have an attitude, you're screwed. You kind of have an attitude and you're not going to get people. But if you're willing, and there's a great deal of humility that comes with, living in this world, and you take that as an asset, they will fuel you. And Bruce really fueled me. He gave me that confidence that I could do it, just like Draga. Like right now, I've exhibited around the world with BB International. I won the gold medal at the Louvre. I would never have in a billion years put myself into that state of being if I hadn't have had somebody look at me and say, I know you can do it. You can do better. You got this. You can do it. So I'm that person. I'm a mentor with WXN, Top 100 Most Powerful Women in Canada. And I'm honored and blessed to be able to help many, many people. And you and I both have some common friends that, we're both in a lot of ways coaching, supporting, mentoring. So I think it's a great privilege to be alive and to do these things right now.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I want to ask you, what is one word of advice you would give to my listeners through this time with the wisdom you have?
Stamina. Just, hold on to what it is that's in front of you, and just have stamina and patience, and just try and see the clarity of what it can bring. Don't overthink things. And there's no point in harboring anger. Certainly there's challenges beyond anything that anyone would have expected in this life right now. I think those who can help other people open up that, plethora of ability and do what you can. Resources are dwindling for some people, and that's bringing on a lot of, confusion. But there are answers out there, and if you can guide people, but I think having stamina is really your gene. That's your genius.
Cool. So, well, Patricia, if people want to get a hold of you, what is one place that they can find you?
The Tim Gillette Show.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
So I'm easy to find. It's patgagic@gmail.com, or you can visit my website, patriciakarengagic.com. I do have mostly on that site is my artwork, but it's easy to also, track me down. So I'm totally available to support in any way I can through there. Yes, cool. Thank you.
Cool. Well, it has been a pleasure having you on the show today, Patricia.
Wow, thank you.
I always love spending time with you. I love that we can actually connect, and we have to still, even though we're at home, because I miss this week. We would all be hanging out in Los Angeles this week, and we can't,
right? Because
we're stuck at home. So anyway, Patricia, I like to close my show out with a little game I call This or That. Have you heard of my game?
Ooh. Okay, I'll try.
I have about 8 or 9 questions. They're just, 2 different choices, and you pick which one that you like, or whatever one sounds interesting, or you can play, I've gotten a few of the, anyway.
Okay.
But I try to do some of them around what I think with you, but some of them are things I just want to know about everybody.
Okay.
Let's start off with this one. I like to find out who my science fiction people are right, and who they aren't. Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Trek.
Star Trek. Are you the original series?
Roddenberry all the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're a Kirk, not a Picard. Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah. All right. How about this? Would you like to dress up or just wear yoga pants and comfortable clothing?
It's always yoga pants and always comfortable clothing.
Yeah.
If I have to dress up, I will, but no way.
Yeah. In this time where we basically, now have things that we can listen to in our cars, when you get in the car, maybe not right now, but when you get in the car again, eventually, do you listen to podcasts or music when riding in the car?
It's mostly music, because my trips are they're not usually very long. So music, definitely.
Cool. In the morning, do you like to have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea?
I've never had a cup of coffee in my life. I've never had a sip of coffee in my life.
Wow.
Never. Not one. I'm part of that club.
Do you drink tea or no?
I drink tea.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yes, like tea.
Wow. Yeah. We make like different iced teas around here, during the summertime. So
yeah.
My next one, you know what I mean? Some people don't think this belongs, but I want to find out for some. The idea of putting pineapple on pizzas. Do you think it belongs? Yes or no?
No.
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 Anything why, or you want to elaborate, or?
I'm just a plain margarita pizza girl.
Margarita pizza.
Yeah, I like my cheese on my pizza.
Do you like paintings or drawings?
Paintings.
Mm-hmm. Considering you're a painting person, I see all the paintings in the background. Yeah.
Yes.
My next one here is one that can cause wars, and I like to ask on my show, and that is the toilet paper. Does it go over or under on the roll?
This is the biggest argument in my entire life. It's over.
Okay.
It's over.
So I had a girl on from Massachusetts a couple weeks ago, and she actually said, well, I'm single, and if I have to change the roll 3 times at the new boyfriend's house, I break up with him. This relationship isn't meant to be.
Like, great.
And I had Scott McCain on, and Scott McCain says, you know, that is when I worked in radio, that was one way to get the phone lines to light up, was ask that question, and people would call to fight about it.
Yeah, I bet.
My last one here is kind of like a personal preference I like to ask to finish out my questions, and that is boxers or briefs?
Oh my God. I can't even answer that. Can't answer that.
Well, Patricia, I appreciate you being on the show. One more time, tell everybody your website so they can hear it on both the audio and the video version.
Okay, so www.patriciakarengagic.com.
Cool. So, and I thank you for being on our show today. It's been a joy having you here.
Thank
All right,
you, Tim.
All right. To you, the listeners, please go check out Patricia's site, patriciakarengagic.com. All right. And find out a little bit more about her and how we've formed a friendship because of such a cool person she is. And you'll see how you can become her friend as well. Guys, this is the Tim Gillette Show. All right. Make sure you subscribe to us on iTunes, Anchor FM, and on YouTube. I'm Tim Gillette, and we'll be back soon with another broadcast and another interesting guest. I'm Tim Gillette. See you later. Bye now.